Hello, and welcome back to Sleepy Science. Tonight we are not looking upward at the stars, though the sky will still play a role. Tonight we are turning our attention to something a little closer, something that moves through that same dark sky above you, quietly, softly, almost invisibly. Tonight, we are spending our time with bats. Now, if that word conjures something unexpected for you, I want you to set that aside for a moment. Because what we are going to explore together this evening is not the creature of old stories and shadows. It is something far more gentle, far more extraordinary, far more quietly wonderful than you may have imagined. Bats are among the most misunderstood animals on the planet. And yet, when you sit with the facts, when you allow yourself to really listen, what you find is a world of soft wings, ancient rhythms, and breathtaking adaptations. A world that has been unfolding quietly in the dark for over 50 million years. So if you enjoy these slow, peaceful explorations of the natural world, I would gently invite you to like and subscribe, or leave a small thought in the comments below. It helps others find their way here, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is breathe. Let your body settle wherever it rests. Feel the quiet around you, and let the secret world of bats carry you gently into the night. Bats are the only mammals on Earth capable of true, sustained flight. There are many animals that glide. Flying squirrels stretch out their arms and drift between trees. Colugas, sometimes called flying lemurs, spread wide membranes and sail through the forest canopy. Sugar gliders leap and coast on folds of skin. But none of them truly fly. Not in the way a bird does. Not in the way a bat does. Flight, real powered flight, requires the body to generate lift continuously, to beat wings with muscle and intention, to rise and turn and climb and descend under its own sustained power. And among all the mammals that have ever walked, swum, or climbed across this earth, only bats have achieved it. The wings of a bat are not feathered like a bird's. They are made of a thin, elastic membrane of skin called the patagium, stretched between the elongated bones of the bat's fingers, its arms, its body, and sometimes its legs and tail. Those finger bones, so fine and delicate, are the scaffolding of something remarkable. They are essentially a human hand, stretched and refined over tens of millions of years of evolution into a wing. Because bat wings are made of skin rather than feathers, they are extraordinarily flexible. A bat can reshape its wing mid-flight, curling a finger slightly, adjusting the tension of the membrane, altering its angle in ways that give it a level of aerial control that birds simply cannot match. Scientists studying bat flight have described their movement as almost liquid, a constant, flowing adjustment, each wing beat a small negotiation with the air. There are more than 1,400 known species of bat in the world. Let that settle for a moment. 1,400. That is not a small group of similar creatures. That is an entire world within a world. Bats make up roughly 20% of all known mammal species on Earth. Only rodents surpass them in diversity. And every one of those 1,400 species has found its own way of existing. Its own niche, its own rhythm, its own quiet place in the world. Some bats are no larger than a bumblebee. Others have wingspans as wide as a grown person's arm span. Some roost in caves by the millions. Others sleep alone, tucked beneath a single leaf in the forest. Some eat fruit. Some eat insects. Some eat fish. Some eat nectar. Some eat frogs. Some eat other bats. And yes, 3 species drink blood, though perhaps not in the way you are imagining. The bats of the world are as varied as the habitats they fill, from dense tropical rainforests to arid deserts, from the caves of Southeast Asia to the attics of old stone churches in Northern Europe, from the jungles of Madagascar to the cool mountain forests of North America. Bats are everywhere, filling the night on every continent except Antarctica. The world's smallest bat fits comfortably in a teaspoon. In the limestone caves of western Thailand, there lives a creature so small, it is almost impossible to believe it is a mammal at all. The kitty's hog-nosed bat, sometimes called the bumblebee bat, weighs roughly 2 grams. Its body, from nose to tail, is about 3 centimeters long. Its wingspan barely spans 5 centimeters. It is, by most measures, the world's smallest mammal by size. Discovered only in 1973, the bumblebee bat was unknown to science for the entirety of human history before that point. And yet, it had been there all along, fluttering through the warm dusk air above the rivers near its cave roosts, hunting tiny insects with supreme precision, living its small, quiet life, entirely unseen. To hold one, if you were ever so fortunate and careful, would feel like holding nothing at all. A warmth in the palm, a heartbeat you could barely sense, a tiny bundle of life so light it seems to exist at the very edge of what is possible. And yet that impossible creature navigates the darkness, finds its prey, returns to its roost, and does it all again the following night, night after night, in the limestone hills of Thailand, just as it always has. Echolocation is one of the most remarkable senses ever to evolve on Earth. Most bats navigate and hunt using a system called echolocation. The bat produces a sound, usually through its mouth or nose, a pulse of sound at frequencies often far beyond what human ears can detect. That sound travels outward through the darkness. When it strikes an object, an insect, a leaf, a wire, a cave wall, it bounces back. The bat receives the returning echo through its ears. And from that echo, it builds a picture of the world. This sounds simple when described in a single sentence, but the reality is almost incomprehensibly sophisticated. A bat can detect an object the width of a human hair, in total darkness. It can measure the distance to its prey, the size of that prey, the texture of that prey, and even whether that prey is moving, and in which direction, all within a fraction of a second, all from a returning sound wave. Some bats can even hear the fluttering of a moth's wings in the echo. They can tell whether the insect is flying toward them or away. They can compensate for their own forward motion to avoid confusing their own speed with the target's. The brain of a bat, evolved over millions of years, processes all of this in real time, continuously, effortlessly, in the dark. Engineers who design sonar systems, submarine detection equipment, and autonomous navigation technology have spent decades studying bat echolocation. And despite all of human ingenuity, we have not yet built anything that matches the elegance and precision of what evolution produced in the bat's skull. Some bats can consume up to their entire body weight in insects in a single night. Consider what that means for a bat weighing 10 grams. That is 10 grams of insects, caught in the air, in the dark, often in a single hour of hunting, one by one. The little brown bat, one of the most common bats in North America, can catch 600 or more insects in a single hour. It snatches them from the air with its wing membrane or its tail, curling inward to trap the prey, then transferring it to its mouth, while still in flight. It does all of this faster than the human eye can follow. A single colony of Mexican free-tailed bats, which can number in the millions, may consume hundreds of tons of insects in a single summer. These are not incidental numbers. Bats are major controllers of insect populations across much of the world. Farmers and agricultural scientists have calculated that bats save billions of dollars in crop damage each year, simply by eating the insects that would otherwise consume harvests. They do it quietly, invisibly, without credit or acknowledgement, while the world sleeps. Bats are pollinators of some of the world's most beloved plants. When people think of pollinators, they think of bees, perhaps butterflies, but in the tropics especially, bats are among the most important pollinators in the ecosystem. Many plants have evolved specifically to attract bats rather than insects. Their flowers open at night. They are often white or pale, easier to see in low light. They frequently have strong, musky, or fermented scents that carry through the darkness to a bat's keen nose. And they produce nectar in abundance, rewarding the bats that visit them. Among the plants that rely on bats for pollination are some of humanity's most important. The agave plant, the source of tequila, depends heavily on the lesser long-nosed bat for pollination. Many species of mango, banana, guava, and fig rely on bat pollinators or seed dispersers to reproduce and spread. The baobab tree, that ancient and extraordinary tree of the African savanna, is pollinated almost exclusively by bats. A bat hovering before a pale flower in the tropical night, its tongue extended to collect nectar, its fur dusted with pollen, is not merely feeding itself. It is quietly weaving the fabric of the forest together, one flower at a time, one night at a time. Bats have been flying through the darkness for over 50 million years. The oldest known bat fossils come from deposits in Wyoming in the United States and date back to roughly 52 million years ago. They are remarkable fossils because those ancient bats, whose scientific name is Onychonycterus finnii, were already fully formed as bats, already equipped with wings, already capable of flight, and already, it appears, beginning to develop the structures necessary for echolocation. 52 million years is a span of time that is difficult to truly comprehend. When those first bats were fluttering through the warm forests of an ancient world, the dinosaurs had already been gone for more than 10 million years. The continents were in different positions. The climate was different. The animals surrounding those bats were unlike anything alive today. And yet the bat, in its essential form, was already there, already doing what bats do, already finding its place in the night. They have outlasted empires. They have outlasted ice ages. They have outlasted almost everything. And tonight, somewhere above you, they are still flying. Some bats roost in colonies of many millions. Beneath Bracken Cave in Texas, there lives a colony of Mexican free-tailed bats that is estimated to contain as many as 15 million individuals. It is believed to be the largest concentration of mammals in the world. Each evening at dusk, as the sky softens toward blue, those millions of bats begin to emerge. The exodus takes hours. It rises from the cave mouth like a living river of wings, spiraling upward into the Texas sky in a column that can be detected on weather radar. The sound is extraordinary, a sustained rushing, like a river flowing upward through the air. And it fills the sky until the light is completely gone. The bats fan out across the landscape, traveling sometimes more than 60 kilometers from the cave in search of insects. And then, as the hours before dawn arrive, they return. Millions of individuals, each finding their own spot on the cave ceiling, each folding their wings, each settling into the warmth of the colony. They hang together in such density that hundreds can fit into a single square foot of cave ceiling. There is something profoundly ancient about that. Something that has been happening in that same place, in that same way, for longer than any human memory reaches. Mother bats can locate their own pup in a cave of millions. Consider that task. A cave filled with millions of bats, all hanging close together, all calling, all moving. And somewhere in that extraordinary crowd, one small bat, barely a few weeks old, waits for its mother. When the female bat returns from a night of hunting, she must find that specific pup, her own, young, not the pup next to it, not one that looks or sounds similar, her own. And she does. She uses a combination of sound and smell to navigate the chaos. Pups call out with their own individual voices, voices the mother learned while her pup was still in the womb. And the mother recognizes those calls the way you recognize the voice of someone you love. Instantly, precisely, without hesitation. In a crowd of millions, she finds the one that is hers. Every time. Bats sleep hanging upside down, and their anatomy makes this effortless. Hanging upside down looks like effort. To a human, gripping something overhead and holding all of one's weight there would exhaust the muscles in minutes. But bats do not grip through muscular effort. Their anatomy works differently. A bat's tendons in its feet are arranged so that curling closed is the resting state. Gravity pulls the bat's body downward, and that downward pull actually causes the tendons to tighten the grip. The heavier the bat, the more firmly it holds on. To release, the bat must use muscular effort. To grip, it needs none. This means that a bat can hang in its roost, completely relaxed, breathing slowly, heart rate lowered, spending almost no energy at all, for hours, for days, through an entire winter if need be. It is a perfect design. Rest costs almost nothing. The body conserves itself, and when the time comes, the bat simply lets go, drops, and is already flying before it has fallen very far. Some bats migrate thousands of kilometers each year. Not all bats hibernate through cold winters. Some travel. The Mexican free-tailed bat, that same species that crowds the caves of Texas by the millions, is also one of the world's great long-distance migrants. These bats can travel more than 1,000 kilometers between their summer roosts in the American Southwest and their wintering grounds in Mexico. They fly at extraordinary speeds, sometimes exceeding 160 kilometers per hour in level flight, making them one of the fastest animals on Earth. They travel at high altitudes, above the landscape, riding favorable winds, navigating over deserts and mountains, in ways that scientists are still working to understand. Other bat species make equally impressive journeys. The straw-colored fruit bat in Africa participates in one of the largest mammal migrations on the planet. Each year, millions of them converge on Kasankar National Park in Zambia, arriving to feast on the abundant fruit of the forest. At their peak, the trees are so heavy with bats that branches break under the weight. The sky at dusk becomes a living cloud, endless, dark, flowing like something between water and weather. Bat wings are sensitive enough to feel individual air currents. The skin of a bat's wing is not simply a passive surface. It is covered in tiny sensory hairs, microscopic projections that detect changes in airflow across the membrane. These hairs feed information back to the bat's brain in real time, telling it whether the air is flowing smoothly across the wing or beginning to separate in a way that might cause the bat to stall or lose lift. This gives bats an almost intuitive sense of the air around them. They feel the turbulence behind a leaf. They sense the wake of an insect passing nearby. They adjust their wings to exploit tiny pockets of rising air or to thread through gaps in the foliage that would seem impossibly narrow for a flying animal. Research has shown that if these sensory hairs are temporarily removed, bats fly less efficiently, less precisely. They can still fly, but something is lost. A dimension of awareness, a connection to the air that guides them. In a way, a bat does not just fly through the air. It listens to it. It reads it. It feels it with every wing beat, in every moment, all through the night. Some bats sleep for more than 20 hours a day. A bat's life, for most of its hours, is one of extraordinary stillness. Many species, particularly those living in temperate climates, spend the daylight hours in a state of deep rest. Their body temperature drops. Their breathing slows to nearly nothing. Their heart rate falls from hundreds of beats per minute to just a handful. Metabolic processes quiet to a near standstill. In winter, this rest deepens even further into true hibernation. A hibernating bat can go for more than an hour between breaths. Its core temperature may drop to within a degree or two of the surrounding air. Its heart may beat only once every few minutes. It enters a kind of living suspension, a pause in time, waiting, conserving, dreaming, perhaps, in whatever way a bat dreams. When spring returns and the insects appear again, the bat's body warms. Slowly, like something remembering itself. And then, on a mild evening, it simply unfolds its wings and flies. The fishing bat hunts by listening to the ripples made by fish near the water's surface. Not all bats chase insects through the air. Some have found their way to the water's edge and discovered a different kind of hunting entirely. The greater bulldog bat, sometimes called the fishing bat, skims low over rivers and lakes in Central and South America. It sweeps its enormous hind feet just above the surface of the water, trailing long curved claws like grappling hooks. And it listens. When a small fish rises near the surface, it creates ripples, tiny distortions in the otherwise smooth water. The fishing bat can detect these ripples in its echolocation returns, distinguishing the signature of a fish from the natural texture of the water. When it detects one, it swoops, drags its claws through the surface, and more often than not, snags the fish cleanly from the water. It then transfers the fish to its mouth mid-flight, tucks it away, and continues hunting. All of this in seconds. All of this in the dark. All of this guided by the sound of water disturbed, by something barely breaking the surface. It is the kind of precision that makes you pause and simply marvel at what evolution is capable of. Vampire bats share their meals with roostmates who are hungry. The 3 species of vampire bat are certainly the most famous and the most mythologized of all bats. They are small, mostly dark, and they do indeed feed on blood. But they are not what the stories suggest. And one thing about them is genuinely extraordinary, in a way that has nothing to do with darkness or dread. Vampire bats need to feed every night or two. If a bat fails to find a meal, it can starve. But in the colonies where they roost, bats that have fed successfully will share their meal. They do this by regurgitating blood and offering it to a roostmate who has gone without. And here is what makes this remarkable. The sharing is not random. It is not simply given to whoever is nearby. Vampire bats build social relationships over time. They groom each other. They remember who has helped them in the past. And they preferentially share with individuals who have been generous to them before. Scientists call this reciprocal altruism. It is a behavior once thought to be uniquely human in its complexity. The idea that you help someone because you remember that they helped you, and you expect that the favor may one day be returned. Yet here it is, enacted quietly in the dark of a roost, among creatures we have spent centuries fearing. Vampire bats are, in this sense, more socially sophisticated than many animals. They form friendships. They maintain bonds. they look after one another. And in doing so, they remind us that kindness did not begin with us. A bat's call can be 100 times louder than a smoke detector. Most bat calls are ultrasonic, far above the range of human hearing. But that does not mean they are quiet. In fact, many bats produce calls that are extraordinarily loud. The greater horseshoe bat, a species found across Europe and Asia, produces calls that, if they could be measured in human hearing ranges, would register at roughly 130 decibels. That is louder than a smoke alarm held directly to your ear, louder than a jet engine at short range, louder than a rock concert from the front row. And yet, standing next to a horseshoe bat, you would hear almost nothing, because its voice lives in a register above what our ears were built to receive. The world of bats is filled with sound, intense, powerful, precise sound, and almost all of it passes through us, without our knowing. Some researchers describe listening to recorded bat calls slowed down to human hearing range. The sounds are complex and layered, sweeping tones, rapid pulses, harmonic overtones. Some bat species have calls that almost resemble music, a structure and rhythm that suggests something beyond mere utility. Though what a bat experiences as it emits those calls, we cannot say. What we do know is that the night sky above you is never truly silent. It is singing in a language we were not built to hear. Male bats sing to attract mates. In many bat species, the males produce elaborate vocalizations directed at females. These songs are not echolocation calls. They are something different, longer, more varied, more structured. The greater sack-winged bat, a small species of tropical bat from Central and South America, is particularly well studied in this regard. Male greater sack-winged bats have specialized pouches in their wings that hold a cocktail of secretions mixed with saliva and urine. They hover in front of females, fanning this scent toward them while simultaneously singing. The songs are long and complex. Males learn them. They practice them. They adjust them based on feedback. Studies have shown that bat pups in these species begin to babble before they can fully vocalize, practicing syllables the way a human infant practices sounds before it learns to speak. Scientists studying this behavior describe it as one of the clearest examples of vocal learning in a non-human mammal. The bat pup, hanging in the roost, quietly rehearsing sounds it has not yet mastered, slowly assembling the song that will one day matter. There is something in that image that feels unexpectedly tender. A bat can live for more than 40 years. For most small mammals, life is brief. A mouse lives for 1 or 2 years. A shrew, often only 1. Animals of small body size tend to live fast and die young. Bats break this rule dramatically. The Brandt's bat of Europe and Asia is one of the most extreme examples. A species weighing less than 10 grams, smaller than most people's thumbs, has been documented living for more than 40 years in the wild. By comparison, that would be like a mouse living for several hundred years. The disproportion between size and lifespan is staggering. Scientists studying bat longevity have found several biological mechanisms that may explain this. Bats have unusually efficient DNA repair mechanisms. Their cells resist the kind of age-related damage that accumulates in other small mammals. Their telomeres, the protective caps on chromosomes that shorten with each cell division, appear to degrade more slowly. Some researchers studying aging and longevity believe that bats may hold clues to the processes that determine how long any mammal can live, including, perhaps, humans. The oldest known bat roost in the world has been occupied for over 3,000 years. In the ceiling of a church in southern Britain, there is a colony of greater horseshoe bats that has roosted in the same location for an extraordinary length of time. Archaeological evidence from the site suggests continuous bat occupation, stretching back more than 3,000 years. 3,000 years. That roost was already ancient when the Roman Empire was young. Generations of bats, each one finding the same ceiling, the same warmth, the same darkness, the same return, for 100 generations of human history. Empires rose. Empires fell. Languages appeared and disappeared. Religions were born and transformed. Cities grew and crumbled. And through all of it, in that ceiling, bats slept. Bats woke. Bats flew out into the dusk. Bats returned. Every evening, for 3,000 years. There is a bat whose nose is shaped like a leaf. The leaf-nosed bats are one of the most diverse bat families in the world, with many hundreds of species spread across the tropics and subtropics of the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. And their name describes something quite literal. Many of these bats have elaborate growths of skin on their noses, folded and layered into shapes that can look remarkably like leaves, spearheads, horseshoes, or strange geometric forms. These are called nose leafs. For a long time, their function was mysterious. Now scientists understand that the nose leaf helps to focus and shape the bat's echolocation calls. The horseshoe bat, whose nose forms a perfect horseshoe shape of layered skin, emits its calls through its nostrils rather than its mouth. The nose leaf acts as a kind of acoustic lens, concentrating and directing the sound beam with precision. Different shapes produce different beam patterns. Different patterns are adapted to different hunting environments. A bat hunting in open air needs a wide beam to sweep large spaces. A bat hunting in dense foliage needs a narrow, focused beam to detect prey among the clutter of leaves. What looks like an oddity, even a strangeness, is in fact a precisely engineered instrument. A nose that doubles as a speaker, an acoustic tool honed over millions of years to make the dark a little more navigable. Bats play an essential role in tropical forest regeneration. When fruit bats eat, they are not just feeding themselves. They are planting forests. Fruit bats eat large quantities of fruit and disperse the seeds as they fly. Unlike many birds, which tend to roost in the same trees they feed in, bats fly long distances during a single night's foraging. They can carry seeds in their gut for hours and deposit them kilometers from where the fruit was eaten. In tropical environments that have been cleared or damaged, bats are often among the first animals to return, and they bring with them the seeds of the plants that will rebuild the forest. Studies in the tropics have shown that in cleared areas with active bat populations, seedling establishment is significantly higher than in areas without bats. Certain large fruit bat species can disperse as many as 60,000 seeds in a single night. Each one a potential tree. Each one a potential forest beginning. The bat does not know this. Of course. It is simply searching for fruit, following its nose through the warm tropical night, eating and flying and living. And in doing so, it quietly rebuilds the world. Bats communicate in ways science is only beginning to understand. The social lives of bats are rich with vocal communication. Beyond echolocation and courtship songs, bats produce a wide variety of calls used in their day-to-day social interactions. Egyptian fruit bats, a highly social species that roosts in large colonies, have been recorded making distinct calls directed at specific individuals within the group. Researchers studying these bats found that the calls varied not only based on who was calling, but on who the call was aimed at and what the caller wanted, whether that was food, space, or social contact. Machine learning programs trained on thousands of hours of bat recordings have been able to identify individual bats from their calls alone. They have also been able to predict with reasonable accuracy what a particular call was likely to be about. Whether this constitutes language in any meaningful sense is a question that scientists approach carefully. But what it suggests is that bats do not simply make noise. They talk to each other. They have things to say to specific individuals. They have preferences, and they express them. The night air around a bat roost is not just filled with sound. It is filled with conversation. Some bats navigate by the Earth's magnetic field. Echolocation is extraordinary, but it is not the only sense bats possess for finding their way through the world. Research over the past 2 decades has revealed that many bat species can also sense the Earth's magnetic field, using it as a kind of internal compass. This magnetoreception, as it is called, allows bats to orient themselves over long distances, well beyond the range of their echolocation. Scientists tested this by briefly exposing bats to a magnetic field shifted from the natural direction. Bats that had been exposed to the shifted field navigated in the direction they would have expected given that shift, demonstrating that they were using magnetic information to set their internal compass. How they sense the field is not fully understood. There may be magnetic particles in specific cells that act like a microscopic compass needle. Or there may be a chemical process in the eye that encodes magnetic direction into the visual system. What is clear is that when a bat takes flight on a migration, or departs from its roost into an unfamiliar sky, it carries within it a sense of the planet's own field, a quiet orientation that runs deeper than sound, deeper than sight, deep into the very pull of the Earth itself. White nose syndrome has devastated bat populations across North America. This is a chapter of the bat's story that carries grief in it, and it deserves to be told with care. In the winter of 2006, something was noticed in a cave in New York State. Bats that should have been hibernating were awake. They were flying in daylight, which bats almost never do. They were thin, they were confused, and they were dying. The culprit turned out to be a fungus, Pseudogymnoascus destructans, a cold-loving pathogen likely introduced from Europe, where native bat populations have developed some resistance to it. In North America, the bats had no such history with the fungus. No immunity, no evolved defense. The fungus grows on the skin of hibernating bats, particularly on their wings and around their noses, giving the disease its name, white nose syndrome. It disrupts the bat's hibernation, causing them to rouse too frequently, burning through their fat reserves in the dead of winter, long before any food is available. In some caves, mortality has approached 100%. The little brown bat, once among the most common mammals in North America, has lost more than 90% of its population in some regions. The scale of the loss is difficult to describe without it simply sounding like numbers. But behind each number is a cave that was once loud with the sound of wings, and is now quiet. A roost that once held thousands, and now holds tens. A place that remembers abundance, and now sits in near silence. Scientists and conservationists are working urgently on treatments, on protective measures, on ways to help the surviving populations build resistance. There are reasons for cautious hope. Some bat populations appear to be adapting. Some individuals survive infection. And the bats that remain are still there, still flying, still finding their way through the dark. Many cultures around the world have long associated bats with good fortune. In China, the bat has for centuries been one of the most beloved symbols of happiness and good fortune. The Chinese word for bat, fu, is pronounced the same as the word for prosperity and good luck. This happy coincidence of sound elevated the bat into a symbol of blessings. In traditional Chinese art and architecture, bats are everywhere, embroidered on silk robes, carved into jade, painted on porcelain. The image of 5 bats together, arranged in a circle, represents the 5 blessings: long life, wealth, health, virtue, and a peaceful death. In Mesoamerican cultures, the bat held deep religious significance as well. The Maya associated bats with the underworld and with the cycle of death and rebirth, but not with simple fear. The bat god Camazotz was a complex figure, fearsome and powerful, but understood as part of the natural order, neither wholly dark nor wholly light. Indigenous peoples across Australia, Africa, and the Pacific Islands have their own traditions surrounding bats, many of them honoring the animal's unique nature, its ability to live between worlds, day and night, earth and sky, cave and open air. The fear of bats that became common in Western cultures is, in the long history of human thought about these animals, a relatively recent and minority view. For most of human history, the bat was regarded with something closer to reverence. The flying fox can have a wingspan of nearly 2 meters. The fruit bats of the genus Pteropus, commonly known as flying foxes, are the largest bats in the world. Some species, particularly those found in the islands of Southeast Asia and the South Pacific, have wingspans approaching 1.7 meters. They weigh over 1 kilogram. Their faces are elongated and fox-like, with large eyes adapted to finding fruit by sight and smell rather than echolocation. They are, in almost every way, the opposite of the bumblebee bat. Where that tiny creature is a whisper of life, the flying fox is a presence, a wingspan that would fill a doorway, a body that, when roosting, can be heard rustling and calling from a considerable distance. Flying fox roosts, called camps, can contain tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of individuals. The trees they choose hang heavy with their weight during the day, every branch occupied, the canopy dark and constantly shifting as bats adjust their grip, bicker with neighbors, fan themselves with their wings in the heat. At dusk, the exodus of a flying fox camp is something that people who have witnessed it describe as one of the great wildlife spectacles of the natural world. The sky darkens not with clouds, but with wings. Thousands upon thousands of animals, each the size of a small dog, streaming outward toward the trees they will feed in tonight, silent except for the sound of wing beats, the air moving under something vast and alive. Bats groom themselves with extraordinary care. Bats are meticulous about cleanliness. Despite spending their days hanging in caves or roosts that might not seem like sanitary environments, bats devote considerable time each day to grooming. They use their teeth and their tongue to carefully clean their wing membranes, working along each fold and crease. They use their hind claws, which are slender and precise, to comb through the fur on their heads and bodies. Some species have a special claw, the so-called grooming claw, on a specific toe that is adapted specifically for cleaning the fur, with the precision of a fine-toothed comb. Social species groom each other as well. Allogrooming, the act of one animal grooming another, is common in many bat species and serves both practical and social functions. It removes parasites from areas the bat cannot reach itself, but it also strengthens social bonds, affirms relationships, and maintains the cohesion of the group. A bat carefully cleaning its wing in the half-light before dawn, working with quiet attentiveness, is a reminder that the inner lives of small creatures are more layered than we often assume. Bats use different frequencies depending on their environment. Not all bats echolocate the same way. Just as different instruments make different sounds suited to different kinds of music, different bats produce different kinds of calls, suited to different environments. Bats hunting in open air, like the free-tailed bats that swoop high above the landscape, tend to use lower frequency calls that travel farther. Long-range sonar for hunting in wide spaces. Bats hunting in dense forest, threading through branches and leaves, use shorter, higher frequency calls that give finer detail over shorter distances. Some bats can adjust their call frequency in real time, shifting as they move from open ground into dense cover, fine-tuning their echolocation the way a camera adjusts its focus. Others switch between different call types, using one to search for prey, a different one to approach it, and yet another to make the final interception. The sophistication of bat echolocation is not a single thing. It is a family of strategies, each refined for a particular way of life, shaped by habitat and prey and the particular challenges each species faces in its corner of the world's darkness. The bat's wing is also one of evolution's greatest thermal regulators. The thin membrane of a bat's wing, stretched over those long, delicate finger bones, is richly supplied with blood vessels. This gives the bat a remarkable ability to manage its body temperature. In warm conditions, blood flows freely through the wing membranes, releasing heat from the body into the air, much like a radiator. The bat can cool itself simply by spreading its wings. In cool conditions, blood flow is reduced, the membrane becomes a kind of insulating blanket, and the bat wraps itself in its own wings like a cloak. This thermal flexibility is one of the reasons bats can roost in such varied environments. From tropical caves where the air is humid and warm, to the cool stone of European church towers, to the crevices of desert cliffs where temperatures swing wildly between day and night. The wing serves the bat in flight. The wing carries the bat's young. The wing helps the bat sleep. The wing keeps the bat warm. One structure, so many purposes, so elegantly arranged. Bats in some species will adopt orphaned pups. In the social world of a bat colony, pups sometimes find themselves without a mother. She may have died. She may have been separated. And in some bat species, what happens next is something that touches something in us when we learn of it. Other females in the colony will sometimes take the orphaned pup, nurse it, carry it, care for it alongside their own young. This behavior has been observed in several species and is not merely incidental. Adoption in bats appears to be a genuine social behavior, one that maintains the well-being of the colony's young, even when individual mothers are lost. In a colony of millions, the orphaned pup has a chance. In a colony of thousands, the orphaned pup has a chance. Because the community holds something that individual survival alone cannot. A net, a warmth, a willingness to extend care beyond the boundaries of the self. Bat guano has shaped history. The droppings of bats, called guano, accumulate in caves where colonies roost, sometimes building up into deposits meters deep over centuries of occupation. And those deposits have, on more than one occasion, altered the course of human events. Bat guano is extraordinarily rich in nitrogen and phosphorus, making it one of the finest natural fertilizers in the world. For centuries, farmers who knew where bat caves were located treated them as a precious resource. In the 19th century, guano from tropical bat and seabird colonies was traded internationally as a commodity. But guano's role in history goes further still. During the American Civil War, the Confederate States faced severe shortages of saltpeter, a key ingredient in gunpowder. Bat caves became a critical resource. Saltpeter could be extracted from accumulated guano, and cave deposits were actively mined by Confederate forces to supply their ammunition. The quiet accumulation of decades, of millions of small bodies eating insects in the dark, depositing what remained beneath their roost, had built something that human history found it could not do without. The cave ecosystem itself is largely powered by bat guano. Caves are, by their nature, environments without sunlight. No photosynthesis happens in the deep dark. No plants grow. And yet cave ecosystems can be remarkably rich with life. The reason, in many cases, is bats. The guano that accumulates on cave floors is a food source for an entire community of organisms. Beetles, mites, cockroaches, millipedes, fungi, and bacteria all thrive on guano. These creatures are in turn food for other organisms: spiders, pseudoscorpions, cave fish. The entire food web of the cave, its complexity, its life, flows from above. From the millions of bats clinging to the ceiling, which each night bring nutrients from the outside world back into the darkness, depositing them, feeding the dark, sustaining a world that sunlight never touches. Remove the bats from a cave, and the ecosystem below often collapses. The cave becomes quieter, emptier, darker in a deeper sense. The bats are not simply residents. They are architects of the world they inhabit. Bats have been found living in almost every type of habitat on Earth. Every continent, except Antarctica, hosts bat species. But the range of environments they occupy is just as remarkable as that geographic spread. Bats have been found roosting in sand dunes, choosing specific slopes where the temperature and moisture are just right. They have been found living in the hollow stalks of large plants, in the curled leaves of tropical fronds before the leaf has fully opened, in the spaces beneath loose flakes of bark on dying trees, in the crevices of granite cliffs, in the attics of old buildings, in the voids within bridge supports, in sea caves and mountain caves and lava tubes. The Honduran white bat builds itself a tiny tent. It chews along the ribs of a large palm leaf, causing the sides to fold downward, creating a small enclosed space. The bat, pure white with a yellow nose and ears, roosts inside this leaf tent in groups of half a dozen or so. Hidden in the green light filtered through the leaf above them, their white fur appearing greenish in that light, camouflaged against predators. A tiny creature, a leaf, a solution so elegant that it looks like something imagined. But it is real. It is happening right now, in the tropical forests of Central America. As you listen to this, as you breathe, as the night moves slowly around you both. Bats can see. One of the most persistent misconceptions about bats is that they are blind. The phrase itself has embedded the idea so deeply into language that many people simply accept it without question. But it is not true. All bats can see. The degree of visual acuity varies by species, but even the smallest microbats that rely most heavily on echolocation can see well enough to navigate in dim light. The large fruit bats, like the flying foxes, have well-developed eyes and rely significantly on vision to find fruit. Some species see in low light better than cats do. And recent research has shown that certain bat species can perceive ultraviolet light, seeing wavelengths that are invisible to humans. Flowers that are pollinated by bats often reflect ultraviolet light, making them visible to the bats even in deep darkness. A visual invitation written in light that only the bat can read. The world a bat perceives is layered. Sound, vision, smell, magnetic fields, the subtle texture of air on sensitive wing membranes. All of these streams of information, flowing together, assembled into a picture of the night, that is richer and stranger than anything we can fully imagine. There are bats that have lived longer in human memory than almost any other animal. Cave art from many thousands of years ago, found in sites across Europe and Asia, occasionally depicts bats. Not always, and not as commonly as deer or horses or other large animals. But there, present in the art of people who lived in a world where the boundary between cave and animal was simply part of daily life. The relationship between humans and bats is old. We have shared the dark with them for as long as we have been fully human. They were in the caves before we arrived. They were in the forests through which we moved. They swept through the firelit sky above our ancestors' campsites, catching the insects drawn to warmth and light. For most of that vast span of time, we watched them with something like wonder. The creature that could do what we could not. That moved in a realm we could only briefly enter. That saw in the dark. That flew without feathers. That returned each dawn to the earth and disappeared. Bats have a unique immune system that may one day help human medicine. Bats carry a remarkable number of viruses, not because they are uniquely dangerous, but because their immune systems have evolved to coexist with viral infections in ways that other mammals have not. In most mammals, including humans, a viral infection triggers a strong inflammatory response. This inflammation is part of how the immune system fights the infection. But it also causes damage, sometimes severe damage, to the body's own tissues. Bats appear to have evolved a way to suppress this inflammatory response, allowing them to host viruses without suffering the tissue damage that the same viruses might cause in other animals. The viruses persist. The bats continue. A kind of truce struck between immune system and pathogen, held in careful balance. Scientists studying this system have found that bats possess modified versions of several genes involved in innate immunity, changes that appear to prevent runaway inflammation. Understanding how these modifications work may one day provide insights into how to limit the damage caused by inflammatory diseases in humans. The bat, in its quiet coexistence with things that would sicken other creatures, may have something to teach medicine. Not a cure, not yet, but a direction. A question worth asking. A path through the dark that the bat has been walking for 50 million years. Some bats return to the exact same roost spot year after year. Bats are creatures of habit and place. Many species show what researchers call site fidelity, returning not just to the same cave or building year after year, but to the same precise location within that roost. Female greater horseshoe bats in Britain have been documented returning to the same small area of the same cave ceiling, within centimeters of the same spot, for their entire adult lives. Year after year, they arrive from their winter roosts, find their way to that ceiling, and settle in the exact location they occupied the summer before. Their daughters, born in that roost, tend to roost nearby, creating multi-generational clusters of related females. A family map written in the positions of sleeping bats, encoded in the ceiling of a cave. There is something very quiet and very profound in that. The idea that a creature so small, so seemingly ephemeral, has a home. Not just a species habitat, not just a general area, but a specific spot. A place it has known, a place it returns to, a place that is, in whatever way the world means something to a bat, its own. A bat's heart beats over 1,000 times per minute in flight. The metabolism of a bat in full flight is almost impossible to comprehend. Its heart, a tiny organ barely larger than a pea, beats more than 1,000 times every minute. Its muscles burn oxygen at a rate that would be fatal to most mammals if sustained. Its breathing accelerates to match. Everything runs at the edge of what biology permits. And then it lands. And within minutes, all of that slows. The heart drops. The breathing eases. The muscles cool. The bat folds its wings and hangs quietly. The range that a bat's physiology can span, from the maximum intensity of flight to the near-suspended animation of deep hibernation, is one of the largest of any mammal on Earth. From over 1,000 heartbeats per minute to fewer than 10. From a body burning fuel at full intensity to a body barely burning at all. That flexibility is what allows bats to survive, to be present in so many places, to endure so many conditions, to persist through winters that would kill other animals. The bat lives at extremes, and it does it with grace. Bats have inspired human technology in ways you might not expect. Echolocation, as mentioned earlier, has inspired generations of sonar and acoustic research. But bats have also contributed to other areas of human technology in quieter ways. The structure of the bat's wing, that flexible membrane responding to changing airflow, has inspired new approaches to the design of wind turbines. Engineers studying how bat wings handle turbulence have developed blade designs that can operate more efficiently in irregular wind conditions. The bat's echolocation has informed the development of navigation aids for visually impaired people, devices that emit ultrasonic pulses and return information about nearby objects as auditory or tactile signals. In essence, a wearable echolocation system. The bat's solution, adapted for human needs. And the study of how bat immune systems coexist with viruses continues to inform the rapidly growing field of comparative immunology, with implications for antiviral medicine. The bat has not only lived alongside humans for all of history, it has been quietly teaching us things we are only just now beginning to understand. There is a bat that sleeps in a flower. The woolly bat of Southeast Asia, specifically some species within the genus Carivula, has been discovered roosting inside the pitcher plants of Borneo. The Nepenthes pitcher plant, that extraordinary carnivorous plant that traps insects in a fluid-filled tube, appears to have formed a remarkable relationship with these tiny bats. The bats roost inside the pitcher's mouth and tube, where they are hidden from predators and sheltered from the weather. In return, their droppings fall into the pitcher's fluid, providing nitrogen to the plant in an environment where nitrogen is scarce. It is a mutualism, a deal of sorts. The bat gives the plant what the plant needs. The plant gives the bat what the bat needs. And neither one was designed for this arrangement. It emerged. It evolved. Slowly. In the warm forests of Borneo, two entirely different kinds of life found each other and made a home. The sound of bats leaving a cave at dusk is something people describe as unlike anything else. Those who have stood at the mouth of a large bat cave at dusk and witnessed the emergence of a colony often describe the experience in language that reaches for something beyond the ordinary. It begins as a sound before it becomes a sight. A rustling from deep within the cave. A stirring. The quality of the air from the cave mouth changes, becoming warmer, carrying the distinctive scent of the colony within. Then the first bats appear. Just a few, spiraling out of the darkness, adjusting quickly to the dim evening air. And then more, and more, building until the flow becomes a river, becomes a torrent, becomes something that blurs the air between you and the sky. The sound of millions of wing beats is not loud in the way you might expect. It is more like a sustained breath, a rushing, like wind finding its way through a narrow place. The bats pass close enough sometimes that you feel the displaced air on your face. It lasts for hours, and when it ends, when the last bats have gone and the cave mouth is quiet again, there is a silence that feels large, a space where something enormous just was, and is now out there, in the dark, filling the night. The bat pup, when it is born, is large relative to its mother. For many bat species, a newborn pup represents a remarkable investment of the mother's body. In some species, the pup at birth weighs as much as a third of the mother's body weight. For a human, that would be the equivalent of delivering a baby weighing roughly 25 kilograms. The pup is born feet first, often in a crowded roost where the mother must hold on with her feet and sometimes a wing. The pup immediately clings to its mother. Its grip is strong from the moment of birth. It has to be. The mother will fly with it for the first days of its life, the pup attached to her, sharing the warmth of her body. As the pup grows heavier, it becomes too large to carry in flight. The mother then leaves it in the roost while she hunts, returning to nurse it. The pup grows quickly. Within weeks, sometimes sooner, it will begin to practice its wings, hanging from the ceiling and making small, flapping movements, learning the feel of the air, until one evening, it simply lets go and follows the others into the dark. Some bats can detect prey through the rustling of leaves. The fringe-lipped bat of Central America has developed one of the most unusual hunting strategies of any bat in the world. It listens for frogs. Specifically, it listens for the mating calls of tungara frogs, tiny amphibians that sing loudly from pools of water on warm tropical nights. The bat has learned to associate these calls with a meal. It flies toward the sound, locates the frog, and snatches it from the surface of the water. But here is where it becomes even more remarkable. The tungara frog has evolved to give a more complex call when competing with other males, adding additional notes called chucks to its song. A more complex call is more attractive to female frogs, but it is also more detectable by the bat. The frog faces a dilemma that has no clean resolution. Call simply and miss the females. Call elaborately and attract the bat. Call or be silent and let other males call. The choices stack up in a web of competing pressures, all of it playing out in the tropical night, in the few minutes between dusk and sleep. And the bat, listening from somewhere in the dark above, has no awareness of this ancient contest. It simply hears. It simply finds. It simply hunts, as it has always hunted, following the sound of life, through the darkness. Moths have evolved to hear bat echolocation. 50 million years of predator and prey creates pressure that shapes both. Bats became extraordinary hunters of insects. Insects, in response, did not simply remain static. Many moth species have evolved tympanic organs, essentially ears, capable of detecting the ultrasonic frequencies used by hunting bats. When a moth detects an incoming echolocation call, it responds. It folds its wings and drops. It spirals erratically. It takes evasive action that can be startlingly effective. Some moth species have gone further. Tiger moths produce their own ultrasonic clicks, emitting them when in the presence of a bat. These clicks appear to serve multiple purposes. Some researchers believe they jam the bat's echolocation, creating acoustic clutter that confuses the incoming signal. Others believe the clicks signal to the bat that the moth is toxic, a warning, a declaration of bad taste. The bat and the moth have been in this conversation for tens of millions of years. An evolutionary arms race conducted entirely in sound, entirely in the dark, at frequencies we cannot hear. Hunter and hunted, each shaped by the other, each carrying in their biology the marks of this ancient dialogue. The night belongs to bats. In a way, it belongs to almost nothing else. For most of evolutionary history, the night was a resource largely unclaimed. Most predators needed light to hunt. Most prey animals sought safety in darkness. The air of the night, filled with insects drawn to warmth and moisture, was a vast larder that relatively few animals could access. Bats changed that. When the first bats developed the precursors of echolocation and powered flight, they entered a niche that was effectively empty. All those insects, all that aerial space above the darkened landscape, all those warm tropical nights over the ancient forests, available, waiting, unclaimed. And bats filled it, diversified into it, spread across it, from equator to temperate zones, from sea level to mountain, from forest to desert to field. The night became theirs, and it has been theirs ever since. Every evening as the light fails and the first bats appear, something very old is happening. An ancient transition, a handing over. The diurnal world grows quiet. The birds descend. The colors fade. And the night comes alive, in the way it has come alive, for 50 million years, with wings. Bats have been studied for what they might teach us about aging. In the growing field of geroscience, the scientific study of aging and how to slow it, bats have become a subject of increasing interest. It is not just their longevity, remarkable as that is. It is the quality of their aging. Bats that are 20 or 30 years old often show far less deterioration in their physical condition than comparably aged individuals of other long-lived mammals. Their muscles maintain strength. Their immune systems remain relatively robust. Their reproductive capacity can persist into ages that would be extreme old age for other animals of similar size. They seem, in some biological sense, to age more slowly. Scientists studying the genes associated with bat longevity have identified variants in pathways related to DNA damage response, antioxidant defense, and cellular senescence, the process by which cells stop dividing and begin to accumulate in aging tissues. Understanding how these pathways work differently in bats than in shorter-lived mammals may eventually offer insights into how aging itself can be modified. A creature weighing less than a coin, navigating the dark by sound alone, carrying within its tiny cells something that human scientists travel long distances to study. The bat, it seems, has been quietly solving problems that we have only recently begun to name. Bats are born knowing how to land. Landing is actually one of the most difficult maneuvers in flight. For most flying animals, coming to rest from full speed requires a carefully managed deceleration, a controlled stall, a precise final adjustment. For a bat, landing means arriving upside down, approaching a ceiling or a branch, rotating the body, reaching up with the feet at the last moment, gripping, and going from flight to a hang in a single, smooth motion. Young bats begin practicing this when they are still in the roost. Before they can truly fly, they practice the grip. They practice hanging and releasing and hanging again. When they first take flight, the landing mechanics are already partially encoded. Not fully. Early landings are sometimes clumsy. The grip not quite secure. The approach angle not quite right. But they learn quickly. Within days, sometimes hours, the landing is smooth, the rotation precise, the grip immediate. The young bat learns to return. It learns to come home to the dark ceiling, to the warmth of the colony, to the familiar smell and sound of the roost. And in learning this, it becomes what it will be for the rest of its life, a creature of two worlds, the open sky and the quiet dark. Bats are deeply woven into the ecology of night-blooming plants. In the Sonoran Desert of the American Southwest, the saguaro cactus stands against the sky, that iconic shape of the desert landscape. Its flowers open at night. Their nectar is abundant. Their scent is strong and slightly musky. They are, in almost every detail, a flower designed to be found by a bat. The lesser long-nosed bat, a slender species with an extraordinarily long tongue, is that flower's pollinator. The bat hovers before the saguaro bloom, its wings beating rapidly, its tongue extending deep into the flower to reach the nectar. Pollen collects on its face and fur. It carries that pollen to the next flower, and the next, all through the desert night. Without this bat, the saguaro's reproduction is compromised. Without the saguaro, a critical food source for the bat is lost. The two are tied together, their fates intertwined across millions of years of shared evolution. When you see a saguaro cactus, that solitary shape against the desert sky, you are looking at the result of that partnership. Ancient, ongoing, invisible in daylight, enacted every night in the dark. Even in the deepest darkness, a bat knows where it is. This is perhaps the simplest and most beautiful fact of all. A bat released into a completely dark room, a room with no light whatsoever, not even the faint glow of distant streetlights through a window, will navigate it perfectly. It will find objects. It will avoid walls. It will locate a perch and land on it. It will find its way. We experience darkness as the absence of information, as a kind of blankness in which we become uncertain, hesitant, dependent. The bat experiences darkness as a medium, a substance through which its voice travels and returns. The darkness is not an obstacle for the bat. It is its native element, the environment it was built for, the world it has always known. In the dark, the bat is not lost. In the dark, the bat is home. And so, dear listener, we come slowly and gently to the end of our time together tonight. We have moved through a world you may have never fully entered before. A world of wings folded in the dark, of tiny heartbeats and extraordinary lifespans, of voices that paint the night in sound, of mothers finding their young in crowds of millions, of friendships tended between bats in a shared roost, of flowers waiting in the dark for the one visitor that will find them. We have learned that the bat that sweeps past a streetlight on a quiet evening is not something to be afraid of. It is something ancient and extraordinary, something that has been here far longer than we have, something that holds within its small and perfect body 50 million years of accumulated answers to the question of how to live well in the dark. The bat does not need the light to see. It does not need stillness to rest. It does not need the familiar to feel at home. It carries its own orientation within it, a voice that goes out and always returns. Perhaps there is something in that for us, too. As you lie here now, letting the breath come and go without effort, letting the weight of the day settle downward and away, imagine somewhere in the warm night outside, something small is flying, moving between trees and rooftops and open sky, sending its voice into the darkness and listening to what comes back, finding its way, finding its meal, finding, eventually, its roost, and then folding its wings, hanging quiet, slowing, cooling, settling into the long stillness it was built for. The night carries it. The dark holds it, and it rests as it has always rested, without worry, without weight, trusting completely in the warmth of the roost around it, and the certainty that when evening comes again, it will fly. Let that same certainty settle into you now. You do not need to do anything. You do not need to solve anything. The night is doing what nights do. The dark is holding what it has always held. And somewhere above you, the bats are flying as they have flown for 50 million years, quietly, purposefully, perfectly, into the dark. If your eyes are still open, you can let them close now. If there are thoughts still moving, you can let them slow. And if the night feels large around you, let it be. It has held far more than you. and held it gently. Bats have appeared in human dreams and stories for thousands of years. Long before science gave us a framework for understanding what a bat actually is, humans were telling stories about them. The bat occupied a peculiar and fascinating position in the imagination. Not quite bird, not quite ordinary mammal, something that crossed between worlds. Aesop, the ancient Greek fabulist whose stories have been told for over 2,000 years, wrote of a bat that tried to claim membership in both the kingdom of birds and the kingdom of beasts, switching allegiance depending on which side was winning a conflict between them. When finally discovered, the bat was rejected by both, and so it withdrew to the darkness, coming out only at night when neither side could judge it. The story is a fable about dishonesty, but it also captures something true about the bat's nature. It genuinely is between worlds. A mammal that flies, a creature of the earth that inhabits the air, a night dweller that lives alongside day dwellers. It crosses categories that most living things respect. And perhaps that ambiguity is part of why it has fascinated and unsettled human minds for so long. In the folklore of Japan, bats are associated with happiness and good luck, much as in China. The word for bat in Japanese carries associations with the evening, with the gentle transition between day and night, with the soft hour when the world shifts. In medieval Europe, the bat became entangled with darker associations. Illuminated manuscripts sometimes depicted demons with bat wings. The contrast was deliberate. Angels flew on feathered wings, bright and bird-like. Fallen angels flew on membranous wings, dark and leathery. The bat became, by visual association, a creature of the downward and the dark. None of this was the bat's fault. It simply flew when it always flew, through the hours that humans feared most, in the darkness that medieval Europe found most threatening. It was convenient to project. The bat was there, visible and strange, and so it became a screen for fears that had nothing to do with bats at all. The truth, as is so often the case, is gentler and more interesting than the story. The bat is not dark. It is adapted to darkness. Those are different things, entirely different things. Some bats hunt by watching the silhouettes of insects against the night sky. Not every bat hunts by echolocation alone. Some species use a combination of senses, and a few have developed hunting strategies that rely primarily on vision. Certain large-eyed bat species in the tropics hunt by positioning themselves below an open patch of sky and watching for the silhouettes of insects flying overhead. The insect is visible against the slightly lighter sky, even on dark nights, as a small dark shape moving across a dark grey background. This technique, called hawking, requires good low-light vision and quick reflexes. The bat sits, watches, waits, and then launches upward at the precise moment an insect passes overhead. Some bats combine this visual approach with echolocation, using the visual silhouette to initiate pursuit, and the echolocation to refine the final interception. They are using two entirely different systems of perception simultaneously, integrating the information seamlessly in the fraction of a second it takes to catch a moth in the dark. The brain capable of this is small enough to balance on a fingertip, and yet it manages complexity that continues to astonish the scientists who study it. The roost of a bat colony is a place of constant, subtle communication. When we think of a bat roost in the daytime, we might imagine something still. Thousands of sleeping animals hanging quiet in the dark. And in the deepest hours, that is close to the truth. But a roost is rarely entirely silent. Bats shift and adjust. They disagree about space. They call out to neighbors. Mothers nurse their pups with a constant soft vocalization. Pups call when they are hungry, when they are cold, when they cannot locate their mother. In large colonies, this creates a continuous murmur. Not loud by human standards, but present, alive. A low, constant texture of sound that fills the cave and tells anyone listening that the roost is healthy, that the colony is intact, that all is well within. This communal sound is itself a kind of reassurance. The pup that wakes from sleep hears the colony around it. The returning mother hears the roost before she sees it. The sound says, "You are home. You are among your own. You are safe." There is something very old in that. Something that predates language. The reassurance of hearing others nearby in the dark. The comfort of not being alone in the night. Bats are extraordinary flyers, even by the standards of the air. We have spoken about bat flight as a simple fact, but the full measure of what bats can do in the air deserves a moment of appreciation on its own. A pallid bat hunting scorpions on the ground in the southwestern desert of North America approaches its prey on foot, walking on the knuckles of its wing fingers and its hind legs. Then, when it strikes, it is airborne almost instantly, from a standing crawl on sand to flight in a fraction of a second. The common pipistrelle, one of the smallest and most familiar bats of Europe, can change direction within the span of its own body length. It can accelerate, brake, roll, and invert, all within a second. Flying in a garden on a summer evening, it traces loops and spirals that seem to defy any straight interpretation of flight. The spotted bat, that striking North American species with its enormous pink ears, hunts moths at altitudes of over 1,000 meters, high above the landscape in air thin enough that breathing is harder. It climbs those heights and hunts there, before descending again. A vertical range of travel that few other small animals could manage. The bat's flight is not simply the movement of wings through air. It is the expression of a whole integrated system. Muscle, bone, membrane, nerve, sound, balance, vision, all of it working together so seamlessly that the bat does not think about it any more than you think about breathing. It simply flies. The cave of the bats is a landscape unto itself. There are caves on Earth so densely inhabited by bats that they have become landscapes shaped by that inhabitation. The Deer Cave in Sarawak, Malaysia, is one of the largest cave chambers in the world. Its opening is so vast that a cathedral could fit within it, with room to spare. And inside, roosting on its ceilings and walls, are several million bats of multiple species. The guano that has accumulated on the cave floor over centuries has built up into hills. Literal hills of guano, several meters high in places, Their surface is alive with cockroaches and beetles and the larvae of countless insects, all of them sustained by the constant rain of material from above. The cave has its own climate. The metabolic heat of millions of bats warms the air near the ceiling, significantly above the temperature outside. The moisture from their breathing creates a damp fog in the upper reaches. The smell is extraordinary, powerful, alive. The sound, even during the day when the bats are resting, is a constant low roar, the sound of millions of small lives, moving and breathing and calling softly together. Each evening, the emergence of the deer cave bats is watched by hawk eagles and other raptors that have learned to station themselves at the cave mouth. The bats pour out. The hawks strike. The bats spiral and dodge. The hawks miss more often than they catch. The bats keep coming. The sheer numbers overwhelm any predator. More bats emerge than any collection of raptors can possibly take. And so the colony persists, sustains itself, returns each morning, as it has returned, to that same cave, every morning, for longer than anyone has been counting. The bat in winter is practicing a kind of slow time. Hibernation in bats is not simply sleep. It is a different relationship with time itself. A bat entering hibernation in autumn is, in a very real physiological sense, stepping outside the ordinary flow of its biology. Its temperature drops close to the ambient temperature of its roost. Its heart slows to near stillness. Its metabolism falls to perhaps 1 or 2% of what it would be during activity. Time, for the bat, slows. Each hour of hibernation costs almost nothing. A gram of fat can sustain days of this deep stillness. And the bat does not dream, or if it does, it dreams at a pace we cannot imagine. Slow dreams of slow things. A pulse every few minutes. A breath every hour. In the limestone caves of Europe and North America, tens of thousands of hibernating bats hang in the cold dark of winter. They are coated sometimes in droplets of condensation, sparkling faintly in any light. Completely still. So still that a person who did not know they were alive might not guess it. But the life is there, slow and steady and patient, waiting for the light to shift and the air to warm, and the insects to appear again. The bat does not worry about the wait. It does not count the days. It simply holds, trusting in something older than thought, something written in its cells and its history, that spring will come, that the wait will end, that it will fly again. There is a bat with a tongue longer than its body. In the high Andes of South America, there is a small bat whose name in scientific terms is Anora fistulata. It has the longest tongue, relative to its body size, of any known mammal in the world. The tongue of this bat, when fully extended, is approximately 1.5 times the length of the bat's body. To store it when not in use, the base of the tongue extends all the way down into the bat's chest cavity, anchored near the sternum. When the bat needs it, it simply unspools this extraordinary organ, extending it outward and downward into the tube of a flower. The flower it visits is a species of centropogon, a long, tubular flower whose nectar sits at a depth that nothing else can reach. Nothing except this one bat the flower and the bat have evolved together. Each is the other's partner. Each requires the other to survive. If this bat disappears from the Andes, that flower faces a crisis. If that flower disappears, this bat loses a critical food source. Their fates are intertwined across millions of years of coevolution, locked together by a tongue and a tube, by need and reward, by the deepest kind of biological dependency. In the whole of the Andes, in the whole history of that mountain ecosystem, these two found each other and made themselves necessary to each other and to the world. Bats in flight leave almost no acoustic shadow. When an object moves through the air, it creates turbulence. Most flying animals, including birds, produce considerable aerodynamic noise in flight. The rush of air over feathers, the vortex shed from wingtips, the sounds of wings moving. Bats are notably quieter in flight than birds of equivalent size. The membrane of the bat's wing, smooth and flexible, slides through the air with less turbulence than a feathered wing. The bat's wing beat pattern, with its variable geometry and constant micro-adjustments, tends to reduce the vortex shed at the wingtip. This matters for hunting. A bat approaching an insect in flight creates less acoustic disturbance. The insect is less likely to detect the incoming predator by the sound of its approach. The bat can close the distance before the alarm is raised. And the bat, which relies on its own extraordinarily sensitive hearing to process its echolocation returns, benefits from moving through a world it does not drown in its own noise. It moves quietly. It listens. It hears. It finds. The quietest hunters in the air are also the ones listening hardest. Perhaps there is a lesson in that too. Every species of bat has a unique echolocation signature. Just as every human voice is unique, every species of bat has its own echolocation call, its own frequency range, its own pulse pattern, its own characteristic shape of call. Scientists studying bats in the field can identify species by their calls alone, using specialized detectors that convert ultrasonic frequencies into audible range. In a forest at night, a bat detector held up to the sky will produce a cascade of sounds, each one the acoustic fingerprint of a different bat passing overhead. Some calls are clicking, some are swooping sweeps of frequency, some are short and percussive, some are long and complex. The pipistrelle has its characteristic rapid, repetitive pulse. The horseshoe bat has its long, constant frequency call. The noctule has its slow, deep, sweeping notes. Each one a voice, each one a name, of a kind, in a language written in sound. There are now citizen science projects around the world, in which ordinary people walk through parks and gardens at night with bat detectors, recording what they hear, contributing to databases of bat presence and distribution, listening to the invisible, mapping a world of sound that the bats have occupied alone until now. Bats have a culture of place passed from mother to daughter. Among the greater horseshoe bats of Europe, and many other species that show strong roost fidelity, the knowledge of where to go is not instinct alone. It is learned. A young female bat raised in a maternity roost accompanies her mother on early flights. She learns the routes. She learns the hunting areas. She learns which roosts are used in which seasons. She learns which trees and which buildings and which cave systems are part of her world. When she becomes a mother herself, she returns to the same places. Her daughters learn from her in turn, and so the knowledge is passed forward, not through genes, but through experience, through presence, through the quiet transmission of the known world from one generation to the next. Scientists call this cultural transmission. It means that if a roost is destroyed, something more than a physical place is lost. The knowledge of that place, the route to reach it, the understanding of its seasonal value, is also lost. And rebuilding that knowledge, if bats attempt to establish a new roost, takes time, generations of time. The roost, in this sense, is not just a physical structure. It is a library, a living record of accumulated knowledge, held in the memory and movement of the bats that use it. The sounds of a bat nursery colony are unlike anything else in nature. In late spring and early summer, female bats of many species gather in maternity roosts to give birth and raise their young. These roosts are often in warm places: attics, church towers, caves with southern exposure, places where the heat builds up during the day, providing the warmth that pups need to grow quickly. The sound of a nursery colony at its peak is extraordinary. Hundreds or thousands of pups, each calling for its mother, each mother returning from a night's hunting and calling back, a constant overlapping chorus of small voices. And yet within that chorus, recognition persists. The mother locates her own pup. The pup recognizes its own mother's call. Individual voices distinguishable within a crowd of voices. Each call a specific shape, a specific pattern, a signature built in the weeks of the pup's early life, when mother and young learned each other's voices. In the warmth of the nursery roost, surrounded by that impossible chorus, the pup waits, hangs from the ceiling, calls, and the mother, somewhere out in the night among all those insects and all that sky, hears it and turns back and comes home. Bats are connected to the seasons in ways that shape their entire year. A bat's year is structured entirely by seasons, in ways that differ sharply by species and location, but that in every case create a rhythm, a pulse, a year-long pattern of waking and sleeping, of moving and staying, of abundance and scarcity. For the little brown bat of North America, the year begins in spring when the cave temperature climbs above a threshold, and the bat's body warms from hibernation. Emergence, flight, the first insects of the season, thin and small but present. Summer brings abundance, long warm nights, insects everywhere, the bat hunting with an efficiency that allows it to build reserves of fat. For females, this is also the season of birth and nursing, the most energetically expensive time of all. They must eat enough, not only for themselves, but to produce milk for a pup that is growing fast. Autumn arrives and the tone changes. The nights grow long, the insects thin. The bat feeds with increasing urgency, fattening, preparing. It visits the hibernation site more frequently, testing the temperature, checking the conditions. And then, when the moment is right, it goes in, deep, into the cave, into the still, into the cold quiet that will hold it, until spring. The year turns, and the bat remains, patient, still, breathing barely, holding winter, inside its small warm body, until it is done. A single bat can catch an insect every few seconds during peak hunting. The efficiency of bat hunting is difficult to overstate. In optimal conditions, during a period of high insect density on a warm summer night, a small insectivorous bat can catch 1 or 2 insects every 10 to 15 seconds. Without stopping, without rest, for hours. Each catch requires detection, approach, interception, capture, and in most cases, consumption in flight. Larger prey is sometimes taken to a perch, a branch or a wall, where the bat hangs briefly and eats before flying again. Smaller prey is consumed entirely in the air without any interruption in flight. The hunting sequence of a bat, when filmed with high-speed cameras and played back at slowed speed, reveals a choreography of astonishing precision. The approach curve, the moment of acceleration, the wing cupped forward to intercept, the split-second adjustments as the insect changes course, the final closure. And then the bat is already scanning again, already listening, already building the sonic picture of the next few seconds of darkness ahead. In the space of a single summer night, a small bat may make thousands of such catches, each one a small perfection, each one unremarked, each one happening in the dark above fields and gardens and rivers, while the world below sleeps. Some bats can hear the footsteps of beetles walking on leaves. The pallid bat of Western North America is a remarkable specialist. Unlike most of its relatives, which hunt insects in open air, the pallid bat hunts prey on the ground. It listens for the sounds made by its prey, rather than using echolocation to detect them in flight. It can hear scorpions moving across sand. It can hear the shuffling of a cricket through dry grass. It can hear the faint footsteps of a large beetle walking across a dry leaf. These sounds, barely audible to human ears even in perfect quiet, are loud and clear to the pallid bat's enormously sensitive ears. The bat drops from above, snatches the prey from the ground, and carries it back to a feeding perch. It is immune to scorpion venom, a biological adaptation that allows it to handle its preferred prey without harm. Where other animals are stopped by the sting, the pallid bat is not. It has also been observed carrying prey much larger than itself, including large hawk moths and Jerusalem crickets, laboring through the air with something almost as heavy as its own body, determined and methodical, carrying its prize home. The pallid bat does not look extraordinary at first glance. Pale, yellow-brown, large ears, medium-sized, but it listens to the world at a resolution that most animals can barely approach, and it hears things that the night keeps secret from almost everything else. Conservation of bats is a quiet and urgent task. Bats face pressures from many directions in the modern world. Habitat loss reduces the forests and wetlands they hunt in. Roost disturbance and destruction removes the places they need to sleep and breed. Pesticide use reduces insect populations, removing the food on which insectivorous bats depend. Wind turbines pose collision risks for migratory species. Light pollution disrupts the behavior of light-sensitive species, drawing them toward artificial light, or driving them away from areas they would otherwise use. And in North America, white nose syndrome continues to move westward through the continent, reaching bat populations that have never been exposed to the fungus and have no immunity to it. Yet there is also hope woven through the difficulty. Bat conservation organizations in many countries work to protect roosts, to educate the public about bat ecology, to install bat boxes in gardens and parks and on buildings that can serve as alternative roost sites. Researchers are developing probiotic treatments for white nose syndrome that show promise in early trials. Some bat populations, carefully monitored over decades, show signs of stable recovery where conditions have improved. The work is slow. The scale is large. But the bats are still here, still flying over fields where there are still insects to catch, still returning to caves and attics and hollow trees that still stand, still doing, with complete dedication and without any knowledge of the threat, what they have always done. Their persistence is, in itself, something worth protecting. The last light of evening belongs to the bat as much as to anyone. There is a particular quality to the light in the half hour before full dark. The sky holds a deep blue. The horizon keeps a residual glow. The first stars begin to appear, tentative at first, then with increasing confidence. And in that light, the first bats appear. The pipistrelles and the noctules, the horseshoe bats and the long-eared bats. Each species has its own preferred emergence time, its own relationship with the fading light. Some come out while it is still visibly twilight. Some wait for deeper darkness. But all of them, eventually, claim that sky. To stand outside at dusk in a garden or a park or at the edge of a wood and watch the first bats emerge is one of the small, quiet pleasures available to almost anyone in almost any part of the world. It requires no equipment, no expertise, no planning, just the willingness to be outside as the light changes, and the patience to wait a few minutes. And there they will be, erratic and quick and utterly purposeful, moving through the dusk air with an assurance that says, clearly and without words, that this is their time, this is their world, and you are simply a visitor, standing still in the middle of it, watching something that was here long before you, and will, with any luck and care, be here long after. The bat is a marvel that asks for nothing in return. It does not know that it pollinates the plants we eat. It does not know that it saves billions in agricultural losses each year by eating insects. It does not know that it carries within its cells potential insights into aging and immunity that may one day matter to human medicine. It does not know that its echolocation has informed the navigation systems of submarines and the canes of blind pedestrians. It simply lives, hunts, sleeps, raises its young, finds its way through the dark, returns to its roost, rests, wakes again. The giving is entirely one-sided. The bat gives and gives and gives through 50 million years of doing what it does, and it asks nothing from us. Nothing except to be left to the dark, to the caves, to the trees, to the night. That seems like a small thing to ask. And perhaps, knowing what you now know, it seems worth giving. There are bats you will never see. In the forests of Madagascar, in the limestone caves of the Philippines, in the cloud forests of Ecuador, in the remote cave systems of northern Australia, there are bat species that most human beings will never encounter, never hear described, never see photographed in any widely circulated publication. Some of them are not yet formally described by science. Each year, researchers working in remote places find new bat species. A different arrangement of features, a different echolocation call, a different nose shape or ear structure or wing proportion, a different life, quietly lived, in a corner of the world that no scientist had previously examined closely. These unknown bats are out there right now, in the warm dark of forests and caves we have not yet visited, living their entire existence without human knowledge or record, finding their food, raising their young, navigating by sound through landscapes that remain, for now, beyond the edge of what we know. That thought is, if you allow it to be, a deeply restful one. The world is still full of things undiscovered, still generous with its secrets, still hiding marvels in its darker corners, still surprising us in the way good things surprise us, with the simple fact of their existence. And so we come once more to the gentle end. Perhaps tonight, as you lie in the quiet of wherever you are, you will think of the bat differently, not as something belonging to fear or strangeness, but as something closer to what it actually is. A small, warm-blooded creature, a mammal like you, in its essential biology. A being that knows warmth and cold, hunger and satisfaction, the comfort of the familiar roost, the effort of the hunt. A being that nurses its young and recognizes those it has known. A being that has been on this earth far longer than we have, and has made, in that time, something extraordinary of the dark. The night outside your window right now is full of sound too high to hear, full of wings too fast to follow, full of small hunters doing their ancient work in the dark, full of bats returning to roosts that have held them, and their mothers before them, for longer than memory reaches. Let that fullness settle around you now. Let the night be large. Let the dark be full. Let the sound above the silence be there, just beyond hearing, the soft pulsing voice of something navigating, something finding its way, something that knows precisely where it is, even in the deepest dark. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Let your breathing slow to something even, something easy, something that rises and falls like the wing of a bat, riding the warm air of a summer evening, effortless, unhurried, at home. The bat folds its wings. The colony grows quiet. The cave holds the dark. The night turns slowly. And somewhere in the warmth of its roost, the bat is already dreaming, whatever small and unhurried dreams it dreams. Trusting the dark, trusting the warmth, trusting the morning that will eventually come. You can trust it too. The night will hold you. The quiet will hold you. And morning, whenever it arrives, will find you rested. Drift now, slowly, into sleep, into stillness, into the soft and patient dark. The world will still be there in the morning. The bats will have returned to their roosts. The dawn will bring its ordinary light, and you will wake from rest that was earned by this long and gentle letting go. You have traveled tonight through a world that most people pass by without a second thought. A world of ancient wings and patient darkness, of small heartbeats and remarkable lifespans, of voices that paint the night in sound, and mothers who find their young among millions. You have spent this time with something extraordinary, and that is not nothing. That is a gift the night gave you. There is nothing left to tend to tonight, nothing left to hold. The night itself is doing all the holding now, and you, like the bat hanging still in its roost, like the cave growing quiet before dawn, like the wing folded into itself, warm and resting and complete, can simply be still. Let sleep come the way the bat comes home, without effort, without hesitation, following something older than thought, something known in the body before it is known in the mind, straight and true and quiet, into the dark that waits to hold you. Good night.